We have the file, we have the access, and we created one team and one player. Here we establish that variable that gives us the reference to team so that when we made the new player, right? Player has a jersey number, a name, a height, a position, a team, and a default attribute of injury pointing to false. So when I make a new player, I'm going to need that jersey number, that name, the height, super tall, what position this person plays, and ultimately what team they're on. Why did we need the Knicks and create this reference? And why couldn't we use the string the Knicks?
Because the Knicks is attached to that object that is giving you a lot more information than the string will.
Right, did y'all hear him?
Yeah.
Right. How we feel about that?
Sorry, you're off.
No. Right. The idea is if I put string, I can only call string methods, right? Here with the Knicks, if I check this player and I check the player's team, I have access to the team's color, location, mascot, and name. Right? Like you can start to see the expansion in terms of the abilities. Would you consider this enough seed data to like test out our application as we start to build it? Does it make sense that we have like literally one team and one player? No, that'd be crazy, right? We need at least several teams and several players. So let's actually build that from the beginning. What other teams y'all want?
What?
Okay. Boston. What are they? Some. It's like a leprechaun, right?
Yeah, that's it. Green and white.
Leprechaun. I don't know. All right. Yeah, I know. The Celtics. All right. Cool.
I went home and told somebody yesterday.
Oh, it's a clover, right? It's a clover sometimes.
It's okay. I already spelled leprechaun.
It's all good.
What are they? Green
Green and white.
Yeah.
Green and white. You like that? Little coding joke for you. Great.
It's a Celtics.
What other team? Y'all serious? Really? Okay.
Bulls?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So we got what? Red. Oh man. The Bulls. All right. Great. So we got
What's
the
the
Knicks.
between the and sign and then like literally just saying
It's right there. It means nothing. And then
You tell me. Inside the string, does this and have any significance?
no.
I don't remember
Well, what is this right here?
it. Being like it's like it just means and.
Yeah, it's just like if I put this in here, what does that mean? Nothing, right? It's all part of the string. So this whole thing just reads as one string. The and is doing nothing. Now if I did this, bloop,
So the two and
Bloop.
signs are gonna be there though.
Okay, because you have an and there, but on the Bulls, you have.
You see what I'm saying? Like you see why I'm slightly confused? Like so the and sign is just gonna show there if you pull the string it would say green and white.
yeah,
That's right.
let's test. Card of puts, right? Okay, 1, 4, some string, and, or, blah, 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 and I end the string. How many strings is that?
One.
And it'll just come out as one
The
string.
exact same one. Okay.
Yep.
I just didn't know if like you stick like symbols meant and the word and.
The two ampersands will in fact mean and if they are in their own
That's
sort
why I
of
was
value.
confused, though. Okay.
That's a good question. Is that clear now?
Yes.
Awesome. So we got 3 teams. I think that's enough, right? What about some players?
Which team are you going?
Let's just make some Knicks players. I can't even remember.
Sorry.
It's okay, fine. I got you. Ready? Yo, the most expensive player I've ever seen in my entire life. All right, what is he? A shooting guard? He plays for the Knicks. Who else? Oakley. I'm talking about like the 90s over here. He was kind of tall. 92. What did he play? 4? One more. Of course. He wasn't that tall. All right, he played the one. He played for the Knicks. Great.
So confused by this, and all of you guys are like aware of what he's talking about.
It's okay. I'll figure it out here in a little bit. I don't even remember. He was 3, I think. So the seed data is sort of irrelevant. The idea is how many players do I have? Come on.
Oh, 4?
Yes.
Oh no, I got that. I just thought you were just like, no, I get it.
Okay.
I just meant like I don't know anything you guys are talking about, like basketball or
Got it.
baseball.
Okay. Is it throwing you off that much?
No, I was just like confused, like all of them like reassuring you when you were saying like, oh, he was like 3 right. They're like, yeah, and I'm like, what? Like
That's totally fair. Cool. I just wanted to know if it.
no, it wasn't confusing me at all. I was just
Okay.
confused that like you guys knew so much about it, and I'm like, what?
I mean, basketball is a pretty popular sport. But that being said, let's put some people on the Celtics. No, well, that's not gonna work. Oh, you're right. Okay, Elbert over here. I can't remember what number he was.
I fuck with you a lot.
He's super tall. Let's just make him mega tall. He was playing He could have played anything. What did he actually play?
Heartbreakers what he's like small forward.
Yeah, it's like a solid 4.
Okay, great. Okay, what about who else we had? Walton. I mean, he's a coach now, but you know, what did he play? 3?
No, Bill Walton was the center.
Oh, he was tall. Yeah.
Yeah, he was
Who else
um,
on the Celtics? Oh, not yeah.
Kevin McHale.
What? Kevin Garnett?
Kevin Garnett.
No, he was tall. And he played.
He plays center.
He was center. I thought they mixed him up. All right. Either way, I think that's enough for now. So, this is our seed data, right? I want to meet these sort of 5 deliverables right now. And so what you'll see is maybe on the code challenge, maybe you'll have some seed data, maybe you won't. Maybe you'll have one thing in there, maybe 2. It's up to you to determine, like, hey, is that enough test data? If it's not, what you should do? What should you do? Right? Like, make more test data, right? And so you've got enough test data, right? This shouldn't take you that long. Like, I'm like sourcing feedback, but really when you make your test data, you're gonna be like, great, this. As long as it's different and unique enough so you can identify it. But I wouldn't spend like 30 minutes like making the perfect seed data. If I'm asking you to build a restaurants app, I don't need you to be like, all right, hold up real quick. Go to Yelp, look at all these restaurants, boom, McDonald's, Chipotle, whatever it is, Shake Shack, In-N-Out, Waffle House, like boom, boom, boom. Make the 5 and then just keep going. You know what I'm saying? All right. I want a method that's going to show me all the teams. How can we do that? Do you feel comfortable knowing how to build something like this? Okay, we've done this already. Remember, it's not about memorizing, it's about the logic. And so I have a method that gives me all the teams, right? The first thing I think about is what's the scope, what's the name of the method, and then what's the logic. So what's the scope of this? Class or instance?
Class.
You sure? You sure? Yeah, me too. Good job. All right, so it's going to be a class method, which means that if I do and build the method, should it be like this?
Almost.
Almost. What am I missing?
Self.
Self dot. Wow. Yo, okay. I'm impressed. What do you want to call this all method? This like all the teams method,
All underscore teams.
Yeah.
right? All the teams. Let's think through what it looks like. Mind you, I'm just like writing some comments here. I'm not actually going to write the code here. But let's think through what it looks like. Part 2, how to name it. So, if it's going to be a class method, is it going to be a class method on teams or on players? Right? So it's going to look like this. Team dot. So I'm going to call the class method on the class. So if I have team dot, does it make sense for team dot all the teams? Like if you were to read that, would you know what it is?
Yeah.
Right. What about this? Does this tell you that you're about to get all the teams?
All team.
Team dot all, like that's telling me I'm getting all the teams.
Yeah.
Right? You can be more explicit.
Why's that?
Why is what?
Is that like kind of like shorthanding it?
Well, here's the thing. You can do self dot all the teams, or you can do self dot all. It's up to you as a developer to be like, do I want to name it with more words or less words? But the fact is, I need to describe it so that anyone looking at the method immediately knows what it should give me. So is this enough for you? If not, we can go here. What is the call here?
That's cool.
Hmm?
That's cool.
All right. So what I'm going to do is actually, now I'm going to build it, right? What's the logic in terms of getting all the teams? How are we actually going to be solving for this? How can you count whether or not everything exists?
As everything is created, save it.
Right. Whenever a team is made, I need to save, or I'm going to put in parentheses, or I like to call them bananas. I want to store them, right, in something. I want to keep track of all of them. Right when they're made, I'm going to track them. So, inside team, what we talked about, right? Where do I want to store it?
In class.
In a class variable, right? Because if I'm dealing with class methods, should I be using an instance variable for it? No. So at all, or at all the teams. Oops. All the teams, or at everything. Like, what do you want to name this variable?
I think this one should be called all the teams.
Well,
Alright.
Actually, add all is consistent with what we have been doing. But no, that's
Well, it's really whatever you want to name it, as long as it gets across what you're trying to do. So here I'm just going to call this all. And I'm just going to set it to what? String? Empty array. And then in the initialize, at all, I'm going to shovel in the brand new instance that was just made. Cool? So that kind of solves the logic. Do I have access to at all, and did I build the method yet?
Well, you have
You have access to the class. So
Right.
yes, you have access to all.
as you develop it.
How so? How would I have access to all outside?
No, you don't have access to all outside.
Do I have access to dot at all over here?
Oh,
Not really. I need to be able to get this class variable. I need to create the getter. So what would we do?
Team dot.
What do you mean team dot all?
Like you said, we need a getter.
Mm-hmm. We need the getter method.
Yeah, so we just define the team dot and then returns your class variable.
Add it all over here.
Yes.
that does work.
Is that cool? What do we say about team here?
So,
A self.
Yeah. Both will work. And the logic is sound. I will upload all of this code. You can take pictures. I just want to let you know that I will upload it. So all your other previous code's up.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't worry. If you like taking pictures and that's how you study, I won't stop you. All right, so are we done?
you still need to reference call it here.
You still need to test, right? So if I have the binding here, I'm just going to Ruby hit that run file. And notice what line I'm on, 49. I'm on 49. Is this the binding I'm in, or am I in a binding somewhere else?
What's the binding here?
That's finding.
This is the binding I'm in, right? Which means that how many players and how many teams do I have access to?
All of them.
Yes. Well, I'm not looking for a number. The answer is all, right? So that's correct. So I have 3 teams, and it looks like 7 players. So I can look at the Knicks if I wanted to, or the Celtics. What did we just define? What was the feature that we tried to build?
To show the things.
All the teams, right? So how do I actually do that? How do I test it?
All teams, not all.
Teams at all?
No S.
Team that, oh yeah.
Remember, it's a class method. I must call it on the class. So team.all. Ooh, I got what back?
All teams.
Yeah.
I got an array of 3 team objects, which is in fact all the teams, right? If this is an array, what can I do to it?
You can enumerate it.
I can call array methods. I think that might be useful. Did we meet that deliverable? Is it tested? Does it work? Great. Now, I wanted to do something like, I need to check, if I'm a team, I need to know about my players, right? And with that, I want to check, hey, which of my players are healthy? Are they injured or not injured? I want to check, right, how many people on my team, how many guards do I have? How many people do I have in position 1 or position 2? Like, I should know this as a team. So these are some of the real world deliverables we're going to be meeting, but also all the players, and then a player needs to know what team they're playing for. So let's start here with all the players, since we're kind of on a roll with this all. How would we build it? What's the steps? What's the logic? What are we thinking through?
The scope is the class,
Okay. Yeah.
and define it with self.all. Players are self.all.
Okay. Self.all. Okay. As like the name, sure. And then what else? What's the logic?
That any player that gets created, you need to store it or track it.
It's basically the same as this, except it's not the team, but it's the player. Right? Let's build out this feature. I'm not going to mock your intelligence, but let's go through it slowly. Player, I need a class variable for this class method. So add at all players, or what are we thinking?
All just all.
All will work again, right? We determined that it should be an array. And when they are created, I'm going to push it in. The next thing is because I don't have access or reference to this, I'm going to create that method. We've talked about it being a class method, so I'm going to start it with self. And then I want to name it. If you want to name it all again, this is simply going to give me the class variable. Cool. Let me test. I have to get out of here, reload the code. Player dot all players, or what?
Yeah.
Great. And I see an array of what looks to be like all the players. So that feature works. And it's tested. And it's good to go. Now, a player should know what team they play for. Okay. So, what's the scope? Just kidding. What's the scope? Class or instance?
Instance.
Instance? Class?
What was
Thoughts?
the question?
Hmm?
What was the question?
What's the scope of this method that a player needs to know what team they play for? All right, so instance, okay. Oops.
Is it like instance does that go with like the whole one to many thing we were talking about yesterday? Is it like one of the many goes back to the main kind of, is that when you use instances really?
Yes, and specifically when I'm talking about instance is, should this be on the player or should this be on like Ewing, Houston, Elbird?
What do you mean by that?
Like in terms of like meeting the deliverable, right? I want to be able to create a method where the player can tell me what team they're playing for. Now, what's the scope? Should I create a method on the player class or on the player instance? So
Player knows what team.
should it be something visually like player.team? Or should it be something visually like, let's just put like Ewing here, right? Or should it be like Ewing.team to basically return the correct team that this particular player is playing for?
Oh,
Which one makes more sense?
you ignore me.
Of course, which means that is it the class or instance method? What's the scope of this? It's the instance. So we've determined that it's an instance. And now, what do we want to name it?
That team.
Yeah.
Right? So if I were to make the method, what do I want to name the method?
Find teams, get team.
Huh?
Select team?
Is it,
No.
are you picking one or are you just saying this is the team I play for?
This is the team I play for.
Right. So let's think it through, right? Let's just take Ewing as a person who is a player. Do you want it to be Ewing.selectTeam? Do you want it to be Ewing.myTeam? Do you want it to be Ewing.team? Do you want it to be Ewing.whatever you want?
Doing that team.
Ewing.team?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So it looks like team should be like the idea. Okay, great. Now, should it go in the team or in the player class?
Player class.
Great. So let me do something like this. Ooh. Well, now I need to write the method. And that is def team. What does this return?
Team that individual player plays for.
Right, that person's team, which is actually what?
The instance.
Hopefully.
Right, so it looks like I built this, right? Is there another way to build that?
Reader attribute.
Is there another way to build it? How are we feeling about that transition?
Yeah.
Good? Because this is just the getter, right? Don't be fooled. Why did I put it under reader and not accessor?
Because you want to take the
Once you're on the team, you're there for life.
Which we all know is true, right? Yes, exactly. So read through the deliverable. This demonstrated, I got really excited actually that you all said that. This demonstrated that you genuinely understand what was happening, right? Like you built it out, you thought it through, you wrote it, and then you're like, oh, I know what this is. This is just the getter. Let me do a quick refactor. So I'm not going to test it because I want to move forward for the sake of time, but that was very impressive and you should be proud. It's actually a trick question because it's like that should already exist. So good job. Awesome. All right, so let's go through the next set of deliverables, right? And it's going to be these two. I'm just going to move them out of the way so it's a little bit easier to see. All right, a team should be able to check which player is healthy. That seems like a normal thing to ask, right? If I'm like, hey, Knicks, how many people do you have to play? Oh, you have 18 on your roster and you have a $140 million budget, but only 4 of them are healthy? Just disgusting. It's often the case. Oh my God. Sorry. I love the Knicks. I really do. So, what's the scope of this? In terms of a team should be able to check which of their players are healthy. What do you think this should be? Should this go on the class of team or should this go on the instance of team? Instance, of course, right? So it should be something like Celtics dot whatever, right? Like my healthy players or whatever it is. So great, instance. What do we want to name it? All right, let's just say I have the Celtics as like the instance. What do you want it to look like? How do you want this to read that's going to determine and demonstrate what it should return? Like, what should we name this method? Is it just, if it's just healthy, what is this telling you?
That's a
Is
true
the
false.
is the Celtics healthy? True, false, I don't know. But the deliverable says check which players. Sorry, this should be S. Check which players are healthy. So is this a good name for this method? No. What do you want to name it?
Healthy players. Healthy players.
Health stats or healthy players? I think either one are fantastic. Personally, players for me would be a little bit more specific only because stats can mean so many other things when it comes to a team, although it would be viable. So I'm going to call healthy players. Now, we did that, right? We talked about instance. We talked about what the name of the method is. What's the logic? With two G's. What's the logic?
Loop and select.
Loop and select. What does that mean?
Go through.
All of Celtics players and look
Yeah.
at their, look at their health.
Go through the Celtic players, and then what?
Check to see if they're
Check to see if
Right.
healthy is true.
Check to see if healthy.
Or injury equals
true.
false.
Correct. I think that we're talking more in code now, but I just want the logic out there. I need to go through and look at all the Celtic players and check to see if they're healthy. Here we know healthy really means injury, true, false. But just get the logic down, then we will translate to code. So, where should this method live? Player or team class?
Player.
Team.
Because we're checking.
You're right.
Team, right?
Right.
Okay. So let me think through. What do we want to name it?
Healthy player.
Do you see how this is like really helping you? Great. So now I'm in the logic. I need to somehow get all my players. Then I need to check of those players that are mine if they are quote unquote healthy. All right? That's sort of the logic. Does that make sense?
Yes.
We've just taken the exact logic, I've just translated it over here. I have to go through all the players to see if I call Celtics healthy players, do they care about anyone that plays for the Bulls or the Knicks?
No.
No, I need to look though, first, only the players that play for me. Of those players, I need to look to see, is the injury true or false? Right? That's just like logic. So, how do I get all the players?
Call it on your own.
Is there a way to somehow get all the players? What can I do?
Player got all. Player got all.
Player.all gives me all of the players, right? And what do I want from all the players?
Celtics ones.
Only the Celtics ones. So should I find only the Celtics players? Should I go through each one of these players and pick them?
Wouldn't it be easier to make like another method thing or something? Like just for the Celtics instead of saying like players all, just say like Celtics.all or Celtic players.all.
That's what we're trying to create right now.
Oh,
So I'm in all the players. What do I want to do here? Let me give you a better analogy. I hand you a deck of cards. I've shuffled them. They're not in any order whatsoever. And then I say, give me all the cards that are club. How do you do it?
You go through one by one.
You literally flip every card and look, is this a club? If it is, put it in the palm left. If it's a heart, spade, diamond, throw it away. If I want to know the players that are playing for me and my team, I'm going to go through every single player. I'm going to go player 1. What team do you play for? Player 2. What team do you play for? Player 3. What team do you play for? And I'm going to select the ones that play for me. So what do we want to do? Player.all returns what type of data? String?
Array.
Array.
What type of data? That's right, the square brackets. It returns an array, which means I can call array methods on it.
Yeah.
So what array method do we want to do here?
Select.
When I pause like this, I'm trying to give everybody a chance. So like just because I heard it, I look at you and I acknowledge, but I want to make sure other people, like if you had an opinion, that you feel free to share it. So what are we thinking here? I heard yours. Okay, select. I'm just going to fill this in for you. And what are each of these?
Players or players.
Are they players?
One
Player.
player. Can you iterate?
You're right, player. Right? It is an individual player object. Because player.all returns an array of player objects, which means when I iterate through, it's going to give me a player object one at a time. Now, when it comes to the player object, what seems to be the important attribute here?
Team.
All right, the team they play for. So player.team. That'd be useful? Okay. Remember, select takes a condition. So if that player.team is what? Think about it. Ready? Celtics dot healthy players. Knicks dot healthy players. Bulls dot healthy players. If each one of them calls the method, what should be happening here? It's going to go through all the players and check to see that player's team if it equals to who?
Team. So.
Are we guessing? Let's go through Celtics here. Just the first example. Celtics.healthy players calls this method. All right. I'm going to go through all the players, and I'm checking that player team if it's who. If it's who specifically. Right. If Celtics is the one that calls it, what are we really checking?
Who called me?
Team. Right. It's the team specifically, right? Celtics calls this. Right. And I'm the Celtics now. I'm calling healthy players. And I'm going to go, what team do you play for? Do you play for me? 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 That's what it's doing. Is there a way we could check that player team to see if they play for me? What's another word for me?
So.
How does this code scale? Right? Because what if the Knicks call this method?
Then you'll still be the Knicks.
Healthy players. Mind you, the Knicks are calling it now. Going through all the players. And do you play for the Knicks now? Because the self is now, and the self is now. How do you feel about self? I like that. Good. Plus plus. This is going to return what type of data?
Instance. Well, wait, what?
What type of data does
Room.
this return?
There's array.
Yes. And I'm going to need a reference to it. So it's going to be, what do you want to call something? What do you want to call this? If I'm going to grab all the players and I'm going to check if you play for me, what would you want to call that?
Team selector.
Players.
Specifically, right? Team selector, players.
Player check.
More along the lines of my players. My players are the ones where I've gone through all the players and I've made sure that the player, their team, is my team. This is my players right here. Now that we have my players and we have a variable and a reference to this return, let's think through. Check to see if those players are mine. Did that. And now if they are healthy. So do I want to go through player.all again?
Just
say
I need to go through what?
Player dot team.
Team, yeah.
I think we want to go through my players for sure, right? And again, my players is what type of data?
The red.
So I can call, right. So what am I really doing if I'm checking to see if each one of these players are healthy?
Dot each.
Okay, what does dot each return?
The original.
The original array. So let's think. What do I actually want to see when I call healthy players? What do I want to see? Do I want to see? I don't want to phrase this without giving it away. If I call healthy players, what should the return value be? What would make sense to you?
All the players where injury equals false.
And on my team.
Right. Specifically in an array. So we know each map and select return an array. Do we want to use find? What does find return? Okay, so we know we've eliminated find. If I use dot each, what does that return?
Same thing.
It returns the original array. It's just going to go through each, do something, but always return the original array. So now we're down to two. We have map, and we have select. Which one makes sense? I only want to pick the ones that are healthy, right? So select, do, and what goes inside the block here? Players.
Player.
Okay, we're getting there. Player. All right. And what about the player object is important? Okay. If the player dot name, height, position.
Injury.
Okay, injury. What about it?
Equals true. False.
Equals false. We want to make sure they're not injured. That indicates a healthy player. At least where I come from. You know, if you got a bad knee and you want to play, that's probably how the Knicks think. That's different. But either way, how we feel just about this logic, right? Check to see if they're healthy. I'm just translating the logic into code. We should test. We probably should have been testing along the way, but I didn't want to interrupt the flow of the logic. So how can I test this? In the pry, for sure. All right, so let me get rid of this. And let me hit this pry.
Wait, before we go on, I have a
Sure.
question.
Please.
Can you, like, say it like this?
Okay.
Never mind, I was confused. I just-
Is it clear now?
Yes.
Okay, great.
For some reason, I was like, why didn't we use my players in the second DOS select thing? But I realized it's my bad.
No, you're good, you're good. All right, so let's get out of here. Let's run that again. Uh-oh. Undefined variable Celtics for the main object. In Ruby run line 2, okay, line 2 under team. Oh, I didn't save the file. You see that blue dot? That means that I have like all that old jank code in there. No wonder. I just wanted to explain through like my logic and like figuring it out. Okay, so I'm in 70, right, which makes sense because here on line 70, this run hit them pry. So here, how can I check and test this method here? I have to call the instance method on an instance. So if I were to call Celtics.healthyplayers, what am I expecting to see? Right, let's take a look at the seed data so we can verify what makes sense. Who are the three people that play for the Celtics? Right, so if I run it, I should see this player object, this player object, and this player object. Elbert, Walton, and Kevin Garnett. Cool? Is that effective testing? Not really. Not really. What I really want to do is I want to injure one of them, not in real life, just in code. and then run that code again. You know, Tanya Harding style, right? And I want to injure one of them so that if I run healthy players again, that person should not be there. Right? Does that make sense? So how can I injure one player? Well, if I go to player.all, it's going to give me the players. And I can see, okay, great. If I just keep going down, I know that the last player plays for the Celtics. So if I do player.all and I just go like that, a dirty trick. What is -1 as an index?
So last
The
thing
last
in
thing
the
in the
array.
array.
That's the last thing in the array, right? That was dirty. So if I do that and I check what's the injury, false, I can then do what? Oh yeah, you hurt for sure. So if I do player.all -1 and I check who that player is, I see now I just took out Kevin Garnett. That was powerful. If I check the healthy players, how many should be in there now?
2.
If it's hard to read, is there a way to check how big an array is?
Dot line.
Yeah, that size of that.
Use all the tricks available to you, right? Like if that was hard to read, you should just know, oh, there should be 2 in there now. So I can just check the length. You know what I'm saying? Powerful stuff. So, did it work?
Yes.
How are we feeling about that deliverable? A-okay? Now, before we move on, first make it work, then make it sexy. How many things does this method do? Is that follow the single responsibility principle? No, right? Is there a way I can refactor this code?
Yeah, my players. Well,
Hmm?
Attributes. Can you affect it into like attribute colors?
Attribute colors? Well, what I'm trying to do is I see healthy players and it does one thing, 2 things. Is there a way I can make it so that instead of doing 2 things, it only sort of does 1? Instead of going through all the players to find my players and then checking their injuries, can I pull some logic out into its own method so that that method does one thing and then this method does one thing?
First thing we probably pulled out.
So if I do something like this is just the logic, right? All I did was this. Boop, 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 boop. Cool? And then I'm going to do this. Def some name. I don't know what it is yet. And make sure my indentations, oh my goodness, my indentation is out of control. Cool. What do I want to name this method that simply gets my players?
My players.
Great.
random question. If you
Yeah.
let go of that line there that you put in there, would it work? Like as the name of that method.
I think so, yeah. It's awful. Yeah. So I just refactored this, right? Now, what is my players on line 31?
You're just gonna call the class method.
What is my players here?
It was a variable that
Yeah.
It was a variable, but what is it going to be now?
a method call
A method call, which will call what method?
my players.
Okay, what is my players as a method return? Cool. So far, all I did was I pulled some logic out, I refactored. So that means that I should definitely test this. So, without getting too crazy, how many things does this method do?
One.
And how many does this do?
One.
Does this follow the single responsibility principle? Cool. This is like how you make your code cleaner. All right. for the sake of time, I'm not going to test, but how would you test?
Make sure
Yeah, I would go inside Pride, make sure I'd hit this pry again, and then I would just call the method.
Yeah, 'cause it's
I would, yep, I would injure somebody and call it again to see, hey, did it track? Did it work? Right? Remember what refactor is. It's not adding more functionality. It's simply cleaning up your code. All right, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna take a quick 5-minute commercial break. All right, so or 6. So just come back at 2:30. Cool. Awesome. All right, so basically we just finished refactoring my players and healthy players. And what we want to do now is build this next deliverable, and that is I need a team to be able to check how many guards they have, right? What a guard is either a player playing position 1 or 2. So if they play 1 or 2, that means that they are a guard, right? So how can we do this? What's the scope?
players, class.
What's the scope for this method? I need a team to be able to check how many players in that team play in position 1 or 2.
Could be class, right?
It's the same as the last one.
Well, let's think. For the team, a particular team is talking about their players. Should I ask all the teams about it? Or should I ask the particular team? So if I'm talking about a particular team, am I talking about an instance of team, or am I talking about a team as a class, as a whole? Right, I think I'm gonna go with instance on this one. All right, so the scope is, oops, sorry. The scope is instance. What do we want to name this? All right, if I were to make a method, what do you want to name this method?
Player position,
Player guard.
Right, something like player guard something. Think about what it looks like. I have the Bulls as like a team. I'm going to call a method on it. If I call Bulls player guard, will that make sense to you? What would make sense if I did Bulls dot?
Guards.
Would this make sense? Was this, if I call this method, can you infer and assume that this will return the guards or the people that play position 1 and 2 on the team?
I didn't
Right.
know that 1 and 2 were guards.
That's why I had to explain it in case, like, you know, just for the reference. Right, so we know how to name it. Guards. What's the logic? If I'm a team and I want to know my guards, what do I need to do?
Go through teams, players, check.
Right, so go through my players or all the players.
My players.
Go through my players and then, right, check if their positions are 1 or 2. Let's do it. Player class or team class?
Player. No, team, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. We talked about the method name guards, and here's the logic. Go through the players, check if they're 1 and 2. How do I go through all the players? Should I do all the player.all select again?
Yes. Players dot select.
Oh, there it is. Look at that. Look at the fact that this does one thing and how reusable it is. Do you remember Hashketball? Same principles, right? That's day 1 stuff. Coming back to support. Klooch. It's clutch. So I have my players, right? Which returns an array, which means I can call array methods on it. Which one do I want to do? Do I want to do a 1-for-1 transformation? Do I want to find? What's up? Okay. All right, and what are these exactly? Player objects, very good. And what about the player object is important to me? Dot position is equal to what?
So,
One,
Is equal to self?
yes.
What is self in this instance method? If it was like bulls dot guards, what is self?
will be bulls.
Bulls. Do we want to check if the player position is equal to bulls? Okay. If their position, look at this logic that we already talked about. Don't stray from your own logic. That's why you need the logic first. You're going to start guessing and you're going to start pattern matching. But if you have the logic, write the logic. Because if you think through the logic and then you write code that doesn't even follow your own logic and you know your logic is good, will that code work? If I'm telling you to get across the street, you have to take the elevator and then go out the door and then cross the street, you're like, oh, that sounds good. And then you write code that says jump out a window, and it's like, yo, is that ever gonna work? No way. Think through the logic, then write the code that follows the logic. Cool? It won't lead you astray. All right. We'll have to test this, right? How do we test this?
Call guards on some teams.
Great. So I'm going to, what do I want to do?
Guards.
All right, bulls.guards. Based on our seed data, will anyone come up?
No.
No, which is an effective test because we should see an empty array. What about how many guards are in the Knicks?
Two.
I think it's the Knicks or the Knicks. That looks busy. What can I do?
Not LinkedIn.
What the?
Oh, did you do? Wait, was position dot po or was POS like what we had for position in players? I don't know.
So something went wrong, right? Even I'm kind of curious. Where do I want to check? How would I check it?
Like after
Yes, pry. Let's put the pry inside the select, right? Because we know the guards is being called. Doesn't make sense to put it here. We want to put it in the select. That's where the logic is happening. Sorry, I just ignored that phone call. All right, great. Let's do this. I'm in the binding pry. I'm going to call it the Knicks.guards. And I'm going to check the player. And I'm going to check the player dot position. Interesting. 5. So if I were to do this exact line of code, oh, I think I have to wrap this in parentheses. But let's try it. 1 or 2. There we go. So, did you see how I like dug through that and tried to figure out what went wrong? When I tried to copy the exact line of code that I wrote, the idea is what is the player position for this particular player?
5.
5. We verified that. Player.position says 5. When I did player.position, comparing it to 1 or 2, which is the exact line of code I had on 41, what happened? What did it return, and what did I expect it to return? It returned 2, but I expected it to return false. So what I expected and what actually came back was wrong. That helped me realize Why is it coming back as 2? Because for whatever reason, it's just seeing 2 at the end and just giving it back to me. I don't want that. I want it to be 1 or 2 as sort of like a combo. So that's how I was able to debug this. How are we feeling about using pry as a debugger? Checking our assumptions, realizing that we could be wrong, and then thinking through and how to solve it and how powerful pry can be. Yeah? Even I was baffled. I'm not gonna lie to you. Usually when I'm like, oh, what's that? 99% of the time I know, but this one I was like, oh, whoa. I debugged it live. Ooh, risky. That's what I'm saying. I get anxious. All right, cool. So yeah, we just changed the code and it should be good. Now let's actually test again based on that code. So if I were to run the Nix, what the, dot guards, oops, I'm still in the binding. Let me get rid of it. Why didn't Houston come up? Something went wrong again. Well, let's go back into the Bri. So, we'll be okay. Let's check out guards. And let's check out player.position. So this is 5, and this is for the first player to come up, and that's going to be Ewing. If I run this code, I should get back false, which I do. How do I go to the next iteration? Exit, right? That's just going to be the next iteration. So who's the player here? Should be Houston. So the player.position is 2. If I run this exact line of code, I'm expecting this to run true. And I get false. What the? How do you get the tallest player on the team? And how do you create a method where I'm a team and I want to find a player by name? That's really what I want to do, right? So let's think through the logic. Let's think through the 3 things that I think are really important. And then I'll push the code and you can have it. So how do you find the tallest player? Should this be a class or instance scoped method?
I'm sorry, is the tallest player on the team, or is it
Oh, just the tallest player that exists,
class? Class. Yeah.
right? The tallest player alive. Cool. So we said class. But which class? Team or player? Okay. And then what is the name of this? Tallest player. Think about what it's going to look like. Player.tallest player. That's okay. I don't really mind that at all. What's the logic here?
Iterate through all the players.
Okay, so go through all the players. Right.
Save the player who's taller than.
Do you want to save the player? Okay, important keyword there. All right. Find the player who is the tallest. Interesting. All right. The player maybe dot height is the biggest. How you choose to do this, how you choose to look it up, how you try to solve it, I mean, that's really completely up to you. What about finding a player by name? What's the scope? If I'm a team, and I'm given a name, and I want to find out whether or not that person plays for me.
Class.
So should this be class or instance? Right, if it's a particular team, what if I changed it to say Oh yeah, that's fine. Instance. And then what's the name of the method? Player name. Remember, it's just going to be on an instance like Celtics dot player name. Okay. Think about this. Who are you finding? You're finding a player, so this method must receive a player name. So do you want Celtics.player name giving it a player name? What's wrong with does this demonstrate to you what this is about to do? Celtics.find player by name given a player name. It could really do nothing else, right? Like that's pretty specific, and I think that's good. What's the logic?
Give it a player name, so you will find.
Okay. Yeah,
A player that matches what you're giving.
exactly. All right, so I want to wrap this up, right? You can feel free to finish these deliverables. What I want to talk about is the whole time we talked about relationships, right? Object relationships, but we never clearly, explicitly said what about what we're doing actually established the relationship. This is really what establishes the relationship. When I do team.myPlayers, the player class is being called inside team. This is establishing a relationship between player and team. If I do my players, right, in the team class, I actually return an array of player objects. So even though the team could be calling an instance method, I'm getting player objects back. So if I have a team that has many players, I should be able to see all of the players. So far, so good. So the last thing I'm going to do is draw. This is a very stupid thing. And that is I'm just going to have T for team and P for players. I'm on a touchpad. Be easy. What's the relationship between team and players? Team has many players. And each one of these players belongs to one team. I just want this visual for you. Cool? Are there any questions as to like what we just did in regards to like different classes, right? Different objects, different instances, having relationships with each other, how you can model sort of real life based on code. How do you feel about relationships? Huh? All right, that's all I have for you. Thanks so much.